Okay, I think everyone is filtering in. I'm Brian Marcy. Welcome to the Rebooting's first online forum of the year. Very excited for this one. And I think about the macro topics of what's going on in the media industry right now. And I think probably, in my view, the biggest one is that, and we saw this in the election, right? It's that the media industry right now is in many ways it's been eclipsed by what you might call alternative media. Not entirely, but and I think of alternative media as a collection of creators, substackers, YouTubers, podcasters, and even anonymous accounts on X that aren't just garnering attention but building influence. And I think it's easy to and was easy to sort of dismiss this as just the latest iteration of UGC. But I think the election showed that there's something more happening. I was listening to Ezra Klein's podcast last night, and his guest who studies the new right said something that was pretty surprising to me. He was saying that several people behind well-known anonymous X accounts now have jobs in the new administration. And we saw, with the H-1B issue that became a flashpoint, this is being hashed out on X, and Elon Musk controlling X, is using it to wield influence. He killed a spending bill basically there. So the question I think for the media industry is how to adapt. I mean, we see creators building these really not just big audiences, but they have really strong ties to it. You see Paul Krugman just went to Substack. Jeff Bezos often says that you should focus on what won't change. And I don't think this shift of individuals over institutions will change in 5 years. And I could be wrong, of course. But I don't think that means that we have to live in a world of only UGC. I think that people want a diversity of the kinds of content and information they get. And the beauty of markets is participants are driven by self-preservation and maybe a little bit of greed to respond to those signals. And I believe there are many signals that are being flashed right now. Some of them that I see are that importance of individuals in building trust and authority. Also, the value and maybe the overvalue right now of authenticity, whether it's real or perceived. Also, the value of curiosity. I think when a lot of people wonder why Joe Rogan is as popular, and I think it's because he approaches these conversations with a healthy amount of curiosity. And we're also seeing humanity, I think, be valued quite a bit more because we're entering this world of AI, and I think that we're going to retreat to trusting humans a lot more. And finally, interactivity and participation. I think the most vibrant forms of media are no longer one way, they're two way. This has been going on really since the start of the internet. And obviously, all this is happening during a time of massive technological transformation with the advent of generative AI, which is already reshaping how people find information and increasingly how information is created. And so we're gonna touch on that. And again, in the focus on things that won't change category, I think a safe bet is that AI's growth and evolution will not stop. And that is, of course, going to have a lot of downstream impacts on publishers. It really already is. And the challenges there are many, including the most basic of publishing, which is how you distribute your content, what you make and how you make it, and then how you make money off it. So we're going to talk all of that. I'm joined today by Viafoura CEO Mark Zohar and Newsweek Chief Product Officer Bharat Krish. Guys, thank you for joining me and sitting through my little intro soliloquy. It went longer than I thought, actually. So Mark, do you want to kick us off? And I have some visuals. So any visual that you want me to call up, let's just give me like a heads up. Maybe just frame this discussion with the sort of big picture challenge and maybe opportunity too. You see that publishers are facing in this, I mean, I like to call it the information space, this remade media landscape.
Yeah. So when we first talked about this webinar, talked about various topics, we landed on the title for this, but I think it's one of many trends that are happening all at the same time that are impacting the media industry, right? So, one of them is trust, so trust in institutions is declining across the board. And frankly, trust in traditional mainstream media. And frankly, it doesn't help that for the last 8 years, we've heard the term fake news and enemy of the people, kind of flood the airwaves. But the trust in institutions and the trust, I think, in mainstream media is also led to kind of, in part, and maybe even more than in part, the rise of alternative media, as you mentioned, whether it's podcasters or YouTubers or creators. So right now, we've got a slide on this, like 4 out of 10 adults are getting their news from, news influencers. You have someone like Joe Rogan who has twice the audience as CNN and New York Times combined, I believe. You've got new media platforms emerging like Substack, where you have Paul Krugman, you've got the Contrarian with Jen Rubin moving to the Washington Post. So you've got more fragmentation in the media landscape, I think, than ever before. And so that's one of the challenges. At the same time, you're having things like, the chaos and collapse of social media to some extent, right? I talk about the original sin to some extent of traditional media outsourcing their audiences to social media platforms 10 years ago, and then realizing, building your house on, Meta's platform or X's platform, they're not in it for you. And so social referral traffic is going down. You talked about AI and AI overviews. So all these things are happening at the same time. And then you've got the third-party cookie deprecation. So, earlier I used this metaphor. As a media, company, you're basically juggling knives and bowling balls trying to deal with all this. So a lot's coming at you, but then you step back and you say, okay, what's the good news? And I think the good news is that despite maybe some of the erosion of trust, media still has well-established brand. I mean, look at Newsweek and Time. I mean, these are bedrock brands who are now competing to some extent against, these folks like Tim Pool and so on. At the end of the day, I think Newsweek and Times brand will, and others obviously, will continue to have strong value. Then you also have reach, still large audiences, and finally, content distribution and delivery. So those are the pros. I think we'll talk a little bit about, in my view, how media can, respond to the creator economy. How can they respond to alternative media? I think there's strategies there, but there's going to need to be a shift in terms of both, I think, strategy and operational execution.
Yeah, that's great. So, Bharat, when you look at like something like this, and we talk about individual news related accounts. These are pretty big. I mean, are these now your competitors too?
Absolutely, competitors for attention, right? So, I think last night I was listening to on the way home from work, Daily Show's podcast. And it just felt like authentic conversation, and it occupied my attention for the entire ride. You know, I just wish Newsweek was a button there, right, on the car. So we had podcasts like those as well. So I think it's obviously it's attention is everywhere for everybody, but also 80% of the attention is going towards most engaging content from brands like, you're looking at Tucker Carlson or Daily Show or some of those big brands, right? They're big, created big audience. And it's gone to different formats as well. So at Newsweek, we are very good at building content for something that's sort of purely search traffic. If somebody searches for something, they find it, they end up at Newsweek. We have been very successful in that, meaning we've had 70 million visitors per month, 70 to 60 million visitors per month last year. Year later, today we have around 130 to 140 million visitors per month. You surpassed Washington Post recently in your top line traffic. We're building scale, right? But what's missing there is, if you ask somebody, they read, yes, there was a recent article from Adweek as well that highlights that. What I would say not keeps me up at night, but what I really want to pay attention to going forward from building the scale is, I want them to have higher customers or consumers to have higher value coming into Newsweek. We have a lot more things to offer. It's yes, we're covering trending topics and all. We cover many of the topics. We cover sports as well. We cover pets, and we cover lifestyle content. We also have rankings listings. We have events. We have an aggressive agenda for events. We have podcasts. We have videos. But if somebody comes in for reading a content and then leaves, it's a missed opportunity. And we want to introduce all of this content to them, make it more personalized for them, right? So that would increase the engagement and not just relying on search traffic alone, and have all of these products stand alone by themselves and build diversity. So that is sort of our mission this year and there comes in AI, right? To how can AI help us, build on that mission? If I had to, scale the resources or people to help make this happen, yes, it could, but at the same time, we will break the bank. But AI is an asset for us to be able to personalize things without increasing the cost of
Yeah, so you have to like keep operating the existing business, right? And then build like basically the next business. And I think a lot of people are in, I don't know, maybe this is just the normal way of doing business, because I feel like a lot of people are in this position right now where you have to keep feeding the beast and keep operating your existing business with the reality, with the knowledge that, you can't SEO your way to the future necessarily with where the trends are going. Doesn't mean you don't do that, and you guys are clearly doing a really good job of that. I think Mark Stenberg, who wrote that article, sort of highlighted that with got the numbers right. I mean, you guys told him because the numbers are good. I mean, you did what, like 90 million last year and a 20% EBITDA. Like that's good. There's a lot of people.
I mean, we're one of the few profitable, well-known publishing brands, right? That's kind of sad for the market. Like I think publishing companies do a great job, work really hard to build objective, fact-based content, and we should get more out of it. So that's one of the. I mean, I want the entire publishing industry to be successful.
So Mark, I'm wondering, like, what are you seeing with publishers too? Because I think the charts we showed before and a lot of what you were talking about, comes down to, and we talk a lot about the word trust, right? And I think I wonder how we build trust into these kinds of products where publishers, in many ways, institutional publishers, I guess I'll call them, are sort of fighting like almost like a guerrilla force, right? Like they have higher costs, they have higher standards, which means they're going to be slower, right? Like they can't just be, Joe Rogan has a lot of advantages on his show that a mainstream publisher does not have, right? And they're held to higher standards, and they need to build that kind of trust with an audience. And I think it's very natural for an individual to have an advantage of building trust than a brand, like so what do you see that publishers are doing to sort of bridge that gap and to build that trust within their products?
Yeah, I think, one of the things you said earlier relates to this. If going back to what's happening with alternative media and creators, it's pushing, I think, and driving publishers to think about their core operating model, moving from a one-way broadcast model of, communication and consumption to a two-way model where it's more interactive and personalized and frankly has social elements to it. So when you go to the issue of trust, I think one of the things is more authenticity and more personal connection with your audience. And so what we're seeing with some of our customers around the world and publishers, and Newsweek happens to be one of them, but is more direct integration between and interaction between the journalists, the editors, and their audience. So everything from like live Q&As. The second you can open yourself up to questions from an audience around topics you're covering, the more authentic, the more trust you're building. And so being able to create those type of interactive experiences and actually bring the audience into the content. And to some extent, we talk a lot about how do you turn an audience into a community? To Bharat's point, Newsweek does a great job of bringing search traffic in, but how do you keep people there? How do you keep them coming back? Well, you have to give them that kind of authenticity, personal experience, and make them part of a community. So I think all those things, help build that trust and help build that personal connection between your audience and, your brand. And not just saying, hey, come to my site, read my content. I'm in my ivory tower. You can't ask me any questions about it. Or if you do, try reaching me on X. So I think those are some of the strategies we're starting to see to help with that.
I mean, it's a very basic thing, but like, I really think like it's very impressive, like a test of a brand like that have healthy, and I emphasize healthy, like comment sections. Like somewhere like The Verge, if you go to The Verge, like they've got like a really vibrant and not like just like LOL kind of like posting comment section that really is additive. And to me, I was like kind of surprised by that, by how strong their commenting is. I mean, I think it's well known like some other brands. But talk to me about that, Bharat. Like, how are you thinking about that at Newsweek? Yeah, obviously you're doing well on like search traffic. You have a lot of, I don't really know what I would call them, like, and this is just the way of modern publishing. I feel like everyone has like a collection of side businesses as a publisher, you've got a listings business, right? And that's like kind of like an accolades business, right?
Yeah, so it's more of licensing and batch sales, and then also lead generation, affiliate revenue.
And then
So
you've
there are
got
multiple models there.
and you've got the events business that my former colleague Megan Knapp is now leading. I think you have an AI event like coming up because I promised Megan that we would mention it. So Megan, I mentioned it.
No, I definitely want to tell you about that too.
But like
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I was like, just if you could talk about how you end up building that kind of two-way connection to the audience, but then also I want to move into talking about how you build the trust into the product, particularly with the fairness meter.
I mean, I think I would say like in the past or even up to now, we've sort of taken the approach of build amazing content, be built around 300 to 400 articles a day, and it goes out fast. People find us through search and other means, Apple News and others. And then supplement to that is, comments and being able to interact with our fairness meter, which is a meter under the article that anybody can go express their opinion about how fair do you think the story is. So those are all, think of them as supplement today, right? But we want to be overt about it. Explicit focus on engagement and community is where we're going next. I think it's not like we're inventing this. I mean, social media already does it. That's an example of our fairness meter. It's been very successful in the past year or so, and it's sort of becoming a brand for us, right? We are now, we just tested something called trust meter, especially going into, the election cycle and all, how trustworthy a story is, according to them, right? There are some findings there, but I'll get to it. But before that, like, I think we need to build explicit engagement and community. Why do I say that? Because one, of course, social media companies have already proved this, right? Reddit already proves this. So much engagement in Reddit. Even my 11-year-old, he doesn't read books. He read one book in many months, okay? But he's a fast reader. How? Because he's reading comments from TikTok and YouTube. Like he would watch a video and he will scroll through many, many comments to see what people are saying. He comments back and things of that nature. So people want to engage with content and provide their opinion, and they like to read other people's opinion and engage, and it's becoming commonplace. At Newsweek, we want to make it front and center, with integration of Viafoura. It's been amazing, but we do want to bring that front and center as an engagement tool. The other reason why that is the case is people are not searching keywords in search anymore. Yes, they do, but they're asking questions, right? And it's less and less search traffic, more and more bot traffic. So like if you see anybody working in a cafe or anywhere, you'll see that they have a ChatGPT window open or a Gemini window open, and they're constantly asking for information there. They're not searching Google search, right? So the consumer behavior is changing.
Slowly, it should be said. It is slow. Like, I mean, Google's still like, I wouldn't rush to sell Google stock just yet.
Oh yeah, I mean, in fact, and Google's changing its model as well, right? So it is going into a model where they're going to summarize things for a consumer. They have no choice because they have to get into that. I mean, news is still lagging in their algorithms, but they have these use cases already ready to go. So there'll be a day when things are personalized and summarized for folks. What do publishing companies do, right? We have to build our own community and our own way of uniquely engaging with them with intelligence that we can aggregate or create that's unique to us, right? So I think that's where our focus is going into. How do we build this community that people feel like they're coming to Newsweek to find and can't find elsewhere?
Yeah, and also, let me just
Mhm.
jump in for a second there, Margot, just because I wanted to I missed please use the Q&A function or the chat function. I'll be monitoring both because we do want to make this as interactive as possible, and we actually have our first cue from an anonymous attendee. But go on, Mark.
No, I was just going to add to what Bharat was saying is that, one of the things about, it's not just comments, it's really about a community experience. And again, it gets back to the fact that when audiences were sent over to social to do their thing, they then developed habits and expectations, and they had habits of leaving their opinion, taking a poll, following other members of the community, getting real live experiences. And then when they went to a brand site or publisher site, if all they could do is read content, there was like cognitive dissonance. What we're seeing now is that not only is that important in terms of just like modern audience expectations, but it has real business impact. So for example, we see from our data that a active community member visits a site 6.5 times more than your anonymous user. They are 30% more likely to pay for a subscription as you're looking at reader revenue and subscriptions. And they're 2.5 less times or more times, or 2.5 times less likely to churn. So this is like real business impact. And the other part I'd say, just as an example, we have a customer of ours in the UK. It's a broadcaster, GB News. They're actually one of the fastest growing media companies in the UK. And what they were really interested in is they're a broadcaster. Their digital was kind of like something they were trying to build. And what they figured was the best way to build their digital property from their broadcast is to build a community link between the two of them. And so they now have this watch live page where the community comes in, they're watching the live stream on GB News, they're communicating with the hosts. The hosts are actually picking up questions on air. And what's really interesting about that, besides the fact that it has like 2.5 million conversations going on that page, is people come for the community. Like they say good morning to one another. Like that's a habit that can only happen if you build a community. So it has real business impact beyond being something I think that's just like table stakes in terms of modern audience expectations.
Yeah. So anonymous attendee had a question on this, and I think it was a really good one. And it was basically like, how do you make sure you're not like having conversations with robots? And I think this is a very modern question because, I think when you go on X, I mean, for those who are, have a strong sort of constitution, uh, you know, you're sometimes wondering, I'm like, is this a bot? Because there's a
Yeah.
lot of bots out there, and like, I don't think in some ways we're fully appreciating how much this is going to be. I mean, like most web traffic is going to be bots, like I'm
Yeah.
assuming because of all the crawlers out there. But also, bots are really good at being human now, and particularly with AI.
Mhm.
So how do you end up dealing with that issue that is sure to get better
I mean,
or better?
markets,
You want me to take
you
that,
all
or?
live and breathe that, right? So
Yeah, well, so
Fine.
I think that's another actual reason why having conversations and community on brand sites is probably better. Is you can use you're authenticating through a registration system or authentication system that the publisher has in place. You can use everything from CAPTCHAs to real names, and you also have much better systems for banning misuse, whether it's bot traffic, spam traffic, and so on. So in fact, if you look, and you mentioned The Verge and others in Newsweek, the conversations there are generally of a much higher quality because you don't have these bots bots running amok or lots of spam and links to, like, if you ever seen a Facebook comments on a site, I work for $60 an hour. So in fact, the technology exists both in terms of authenticating real users and moderating their conversations and taking out spam to make those conversations, much more on brand. And frankly, they're also tied to better content because they're on Newsweek site, responding to the great content they put forward.
So you had called it sort of like an original sin of some sorts. I think there's a lot of original sins actually of internet publishing. I got to catalog them sometime. It'd be a good post. Thank you for the idea. But was really basically to relinquish the conversation aspect to social media, right? And I think that's probably right. And I wonder, can you put it back in the bottle, right? Like, I mean, you've almost trained people that the conversation mode takes place somewhere else and the engagement mode, but the consumption mode takes place on this website. And I think this is it's going to be a more important issue and possibly, existential issue when you start to play forward some of this agentic AI. Like if we have these AI agents going out and retrieving the information and most of the traffic to websites, which are just a clunky front end on a database, are going to be agents, then you're going to have to give people a very compelling reason to come to your website. I mean, there's all kinds of things, whether you're going to be blocking agents and whatnot, but like, it seems to me that the bar is going to have to be pretty high to get people to come to websites, and still getting people to come to websites. We talk about the existing business is still a major part of the business, right, Bara?
Yeah, I mean, the website is still a major part of the business, but uh, it won't be in short order, meaning other things are gonna usurp them, right? Even for example, our Apple News business is sizable business now. That's people coming through subscribing for Apple News Plus and consuming Newsweek content through that, right? I mean, it was the
And you
same
get
when
a
I was
cut. The way I think it's interesting, the way you get a cut on that, basically, Apple takes half of all
yeah,
the money, and then the other half gets split to publishers based on the amount of time, I believe, right?
yeah, the
That people spend
engagement
on.
and
Okay.
uh, yeah, I mean, they obviously have algorithms to define this. You would not know. I'm sure they're not going to share the calculation, but we do get the bills, the checks. So
Check show up. Good.
yeah, checks show up, and we know how many people engage. It is a sizable business. So, and then just the other day I was checking what's our traffic from OpenAI bots, right? The plugins. It's 2 million visits or 2 million sort of plugin requests per week. Okay. That's coming from bots that a few months ago didn't exist. Okay. So
So wait,
all of
they're
these,
coming to your site for what, to do what?
they're so it's when somebody's asking, uh, say who is Pete Heggs, right? So and uh, the bot knows it's news content. It's and then it's trying to find information from news sources, latest news sources. So it's very relevant to what people are asking for, but
Yeah.
the information can be in any news source, and Newsweek happens to be one of the legit sources that it thinks that could have the information. So our content and other publisher content very important for these bots, okay, these aggregators, because that's not their core competency. Journalism is not, but distribution is, right? In our case, we have to make sure that we show up where people's eyeballs are and where it's moving. So that's in a way part of our challenge, but also an opportunity. So now how do we showcase our content within ChatGPT? I don't know. That's a new format. If our content shows up there, how do we monetize it? Again, that's also another green space. We launched our search, generative AI-based search. For those in the audience, you should go check it out, search.newsweek.com. It's think of it as like our first iteration. We took 600,000, almost 600,000 of our articles, and then had a large language model learn it. It's a RAG-based approach where you search any topic, it'll go look in Newsweek articles for intelligence. What we found was the engagement increased when we provided more ways for people to ask questions and knowledge mine. The stats are like previously people searched like maybe 100 to 1,000 searches a day. Today they do almost 30,000 searches a day. So when you provide relevant information and intelligence, people stay and want to learn more, right? So I think that's this is an example of how we're leveraging AI to bring all of our knowledge in one place on behalf of the consumer.
This is another one where I do wonder about having trained users, right? Like site search has been terrible for so long. Anyone who's even it worked in publishing usually goes to Google and just puts their publication name plus whatever they're looking for. Because so if people who work at the publisher don't believe in the site search, I think it's a reputation issue that I think some of this like AI search, I think that's like my big question about it is whether you end up paying for like the sort of sins of the past, which is that, I don't think like publishers really prioritize having a good site search function. And so like people didn't use it.
Yeah, I mean, I always believe if you provide a great product, people will leverage it, right? But you need to learn, as part of it, learn what the consumer needs are. In fact, if you look at the search, you'll find something that we didn't have in other searches is provide feedback. Tell us if this is good or bad, and then comment why it's good or bad. And then we now have a lot of intelligence because of that we can provide to our content team saying, hey, this is what people are looking for, or this is what they're saying about our content. We get the same from our comments as well. That makes our content team also much more intelligent in their content pipeline. So, like I said, this is the first iteration. Where we want to get to is, similar behavior as ChatGPT, Perplexity, and others, because people are getting used to it now. The culture is changing of finding content. As a news publishing company, our culture needs to change also at how we distribute content through all
So
of these.
Scott Everett, yes, Scott Everett has a question. I want to have you take a crack at it, Mark, and then Bharat. What type of community engagement CX is finding to be the highest rate of conversion in driving registered users? Because I think, you know, one of the obvious tangible business benefits, everyone wants to get their hands on more audience data.
It depends, but I'll tell you from our experience, just in terms of pure kind of conversion rates, one of the best community experiences is hosting a live Q&A on your owned and operated property, either with an existing journalist who's covering a topic that they've written about or bringing an outside expert. Those types of things are kind of both time-bound, you know, an hour with direct access, could be with video, could be without video. And if it's done well and promoted well ahead of time to say, hey, submit your questions to, you know, Bharat to talk about the future of Newsweek search. Those are great conversion points because you need to register and turn yourself from an anonymous user into a registered user to participate in that. Or a lot of our customers will make that a premium experience and pack more value into a premium subscription. So those are great great examples of high converting community experiences. I want just to go back to one thing, if you don't mind, about the AI part while we're talking about AI, because there's some really interesting things we're starting to see with AI and community. So one of our customers, and actually I know that Newsweek does a really good job on Google Discover traffic. But one of our customers, what they're doing is they're using their own in-house built AI, and on community pages with comments, they're automatically creating new pages, kind of community pages, right? It's done almost all automatically. It scales incredibly well. And what they found is that these new pages are picked up disproportionately by Google Discover. And their assumption is, you know, Google is looking for content that's authentic to deal with the AI slop that's out there and that has expertise. So if you can put together these pages where there's expertise, people are asking questions or they're responding to it and they're authentic, it's another, you know, way to drive traffic acquisition through using your community and AI together.
Yeah, that's a great point because, I mean, anyone who's been, you know, sort of looking closely at the Google search results, it's sort of like it's wild over there what they're doing and what they're trying to do. I mean, some of the results, like, you know, random like LSU forums for, you know, high yield savings accounts will pop up, but you know, they're definitely preferencing clearly Reddit, but beyond that, all sort of community based content. A question that came in, Bharat, is, unless you have something to add on the community engagement, Bharat, do you have anything on
I mean, I think we drive a lot of registrations for the traditional newsletters and topical stuff, but today still the engagement's highest on you know, covering trending topics on time, being the first to cover it, and how fast we cover it. That's what engages the people most. We do want to create more premium features, whether they are commenting features or AI features. And you'll see we're building our subscription plan, a renewed subscription plan going forward, where these premium features, we want to make sure that we engage with our consumer closely to continue to build that. We are also going to launch a new mobile app 3 months from now, which would be a very personalized mobile app, which would require login and registration and honestly being able to pay. So we're doing a bunch of things that are sort of very sort of consumer centric, but may not be for the mass, but personalized for a few, right? So that's you'll start to see more and more of that.
Yeah. Ben Kim has a really interesting question that hits on something I think about a lot, which is, you know, not every brand really lends itself to community. Like some brands are not like that, are not really great at that. I mean, and it's sometimes it's hard to understand. I remember in my last job, you know, we had a few different brands, and one of them was smaller but really good at community. And then, you know, our main brand was honestly not as good at community. They were good at like events, but like the actual community of, you know, beyond, you know, a very like commercial relationship being built between buyers and sellers, there wasn't as much of that. And how do you end up thinking about community? It's thrown around a lot, but like what Ben was saying, he was saying IRL community is naturally limited by the inability to converse in person to more than one person. This helps people focus and sometimes build a relationship. And what he asks is like, have you seen any tools or used any that enable relationship building in online communities beyond the cursory good morning? Like, how do you end up? I don't know if people are getting married, if they meet in the comments getting married, like on GB News. Maybe, Mark. I don't know if you could take credit for
Well,
this.
we actually have some examples of that. Believe it or not,
Oh boy, see, we didn't even
we have.
prepare for that.
I'll tell you one of my favorite anecdotes. AARP is one of our customers, so you wouldn't. I mean, AARP
I
is
don't know where this is going.
yeah. Well, wait for it. And
Dude,
so
they're the largest print.
I know, they're a
yeah.
juggernaut.
So they had
Sorry, keep going.
they have a site, and I think I'm going to get this right. I think it's called thegirlfriend.com. And they had some questions around, tell us about your first kind of crush or love or whatever it is. And people started getting in there and talking about it. And the empathy and the support and people were connecting with one another is pretty incredible. And by the way, I want to say that like community is a broad thing. It's not just comments
Yeah.
and it's just not live Q&A. At the end of the day, it's about, are you being able to interact and share and make connections both with the brand and with other community members? And that can take, you know, a range of ways you can do that. But and I would take issue with the fact that not every brand can have community. If you don't believe that your brand, and whether you're a retailer or a publisher, shouldn't provide some means for your audience to connect with one another and with yourself in whatever way, there's always room for community, whether it's online, offline, comments, AMAs, polls, all those things create those connections. And frankly, you know, the reality of social media cracked the code on this, right? If I follow you on X, Brian, like I'm going to get your updates and I'm kind of feel more connected to you. So the notion of following users even on sites to get insights or even just follow them for, you know, updates is important.
Okay. We have a couple questions for you, Bharat. One is from Uri Ludger. Sorry if I mispronounced your name, Uri. For Mr. Krish. How are things looking on the
Thank
print
you
side?
for being so
I
respectful.
know. The honorific. We like it. This is a classy online
I
forum.
feel old.
I feel old when AARP keeps sending me direct mail. How are things looking on the print side? Like, what is the role of print in all of this? You know, I think it's I don't want to say it's an age-old question, but it's been a question that's been going on for a long time. And I'm actually pro print. I think print is it's a niche product, but I think it's actually a product.
I mean, I love print, you know, but I spend most of the time thinking about digital. So I'll try to do some justice to it. We do have a print site. You can actually go subscribe to it today if you do a premium subscription. We don't have a lot of subscribers print because we're not putting that much love in it, right? So partly because the money is just not there. Yeah? But there are a few things to I do keep seeing that there's a resurrection in sort of print based media. It just, with all the chaos of content around, it almost feels like it's freeing your brain to just focus on one thing. Okay. So, and I keep seeing like there's also publications around for kids as well. That's starting to happen. You see more and more of that. Um, but there are a few things to learn from print. One is how the model changed, right? Before, a lot of publishing companies that were print first, they built content for print and then they also did digital. Now we built content for digital and we pick the stories that are needed to go into print. Um, because it's obviously a smaller format. You can't fit 300 stories in there. Um, and it's a much more engaging format. The thing to learn from print is like when you flip through a magazine, uh, there's a certain level of soul and emotion in it, okay? Because of the topography, the images, there's a curation aspect to it. I always think about like, how do I bring this into digital? So how do we bring that sort of emotion into digital? And that's in a way is there a future for print? It's yet to be determined. I think there's a place for it, but it unfortunately is not a moneymaker for a lot of publishers. So it, it'll be there on coffee tables, but not everybody's going to subscribe to it.
Yeah. I think it can be part of a model. I mean, my like pro print sort of take, I guess, would be that it can be part of a model, it just serves a different purpose. I mean, it might be
Yeah.
more branding. You might, obviously, everyone like lowers frequency, maybe you up the stock, and you like, if you really believe in print, right? And I think it has a lot of advantages with where, AI is taking us, which is just, ever more content, ever more slop out there. I think
Yeah.
print by its nature has a lot more craft to it. And it's a nice package, and it's also finishable. I think a lot of the fatigue that a lot of people feel is that the internet by its nature it's endless. We've
Yeah.
never had more. And now we're going to be able to create content with a push of a button. So like that's not going to get any better, so.
Yeah, I mean, is there a future for it as just similar to, in-person events have come back? Is there a future for just a medium where it's super curated, little booklet
Yeah.
that gives you the information and
Right. I
and
wouldn't
people are
launch like a
sick
weekly,
of
a weekly news magazine on its
yeah.
own right now, but like it could
Yeah, I
evolve.
wouldn't recommend that to anybody.
Anyone listening, please.
Unless I hate them.
uh, Mark, maybe you could take a crack at this. This is from Scott Losasso. He had a follow-up on the print because I think this is a fascinating one. Do you think editors and contributors or writers, I guess, will soon look more like influencers or content creators than quote unquote authors? Charismatic expertise seems like the killer app. How do you bridge the economic interest of the publisher brand and the influencer brand? I think this plays into a little bit of like how we're going to see creators and publishers do some kind of tango.
Yeah, I mean, it's not new. I mean, if you think about Forbes Contributor Network, which has been around for a long time, to some extent, it's kind of an influencer network using Forbes's platform to, bring in writers to write for Forbes. More recently, we talked about this, Brian, recently. I think Yahoo is doing some really interesting things in the creator space, where they're leveraging their platform and bringing in folks, both on the news side. So this was introduced sometime last year. So a creator program where they're inviting influencers and writers to, publish on the Yahoo platform and get part of the creator economy from that. So that's a really interesting way. Going back to one of my first points is, and this is maybe even more interesting to some extent. So Yahoo also launched a kind of finance influencer model, and they partnered with forget Mac something or other. He's like one of the well-known influencers in finance, and they're giving them these tools on their site, the ability to grow an audience on the Yahoo platform and to monetize. So this is, I think, an opportunity actually for publishers to going back to my first point, leverage their brand and their reach and their content delivery and distribution systems to bring and actually partner with influencers for whether it's for lifestyle or news or finance. I think we're going to see more of this. It's definitely in its early stages. I think you're also going to see publishers, start to launch vertical video and potentially bring in influencers as part of that. So these are all, I think, early stage opportunities. I think my personal view is, you need to be able to embrace creators in a way that's going to make you part of the conversation, and to some extent look at what creators are doing to grow their audiences so quickly and take some cues from how they're doing it. Again, that authenticity, that transparency, that interaction and participation.
Yeah, I think the authenticity piece is I know it's overused, but like it's truly critical. I mean, I think if you compare in the presidential campaign how the Kamala Harris campaign used celebrities and influencers and paid $1 million for a Call Daddy set versus the Trump campaign's integration with the quote unquote manosphere, I think there is a massive difference. And we're already seeing a lot of like lifestyle publishers. Like I go back to like, like Bustle, what they're doing with nylon. I went to like the nylon party at like Art Basel. It was just all creators. And what they're selling to their sponsors really is less their reach and more you're going to get all of this reach through these creators and these Instagram influencers as much as, going to Nylon's website or a print product. So I think that's a really good point. One question for I like this one too for Bharat because it's inside the sausage factory from Mark Choquette. He asked about product management as a discipline within publishers and what you've done to transform Newsweek. And he mentions one of the things that surprised him was moving from e-com into publishing was just how far behind the industry is when it comes to product-led approaches to improving media products. And I think that's a great point. I mean, honestly, like product didn't even exist at publishers like not that long ago. And it certainly wasn't. I think the way product was treated was far different than it's treated in more technology native organizations.
Yeah, I mean it's a great question, and I would say we're on the journey of becoming product led. Traditionally, a lot of the publishing companies, and this is what you probably saw when you moved from e-commerce, is it's very sort of content led, right? Because now tech and product and distribution is at least half the equation. If you don't tackle the tech part, and because it's digital content mostly, it's hard to find your consumer. So that's why product-led approach is important, where what does that mean? Means you're thinking about your consumer at all times. I always say product equals consumer, right? So what do they need? Where do they consume content? What is happening in their life? And then if you can work backwards from it, you can help create content or experiences or a community based off of that. The ground truth is in the consumer behavior and what they need. So that's why product-led approach is so important. The Googles of the world and like Airbnb and others natively understand this, right? The startups, the SaaS startups natively understand this. Every SaaS startup, when they get funding, or even before, one of the first hires is a customer success person. Okay, so because they want to make sure that whatever they're selling, somebody who's buying it is happy enough to increase the lifetime value of that. So that's the biggest shift that publishing companies need to make is how do you bring in people, retain, increase lifetime value, and then if they love your product and they're paying for it, then there's a big business there. So and we're bringing that culture to Newsweek as well. Our product managers are not just from media industry. When I was at Time, we did the same. We hired folks from Uber AI team or Amazon or Google. So I wanted to bring the tech DNA into a media company, and how you lead things by leveraging product managers that are tech oriented, but they can also speak the business language. One day they can build a budget for it. Another day they could fix a tech fire that's happening. Third day they can come up with a roadmap for that product. So I rely a lot on product managers, and our product managers, in a way, are driving the business forward and the growth forward today at Newsweek.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you bring up like SaaS startups. It is such a challenge though with the complexity of a lot of these publishing businesses that have to operate almost like 5 or 6 different businesses at the end of the day with conflicting needs and incentives at the end of the day. I mean, I always joke like you can see all the conflicts when you land on a lot of like web pages when I'm like, what do you want me to do? Like, do you want me to sign up for the alerts? Do you want the newsletter? We've got a subscription tout. We've got an autoplay video. And like, the reality is it's a complicated business. Most of them, you're not just creating a piece of software and then selling it to customers. First of all, you're creating it every day, multiple times a day. And then you also have to serve, oftentimes your audiences are not your customers. Your customers are different people. So it's definitely, I find product a fascinating area at publishers because it really speaks to a lot of the complexities and challenges of this space. Couple more because we're running, and I want to get to the takeaways. One from Mary Tyler March, which I thought was pretty interesting. Mark, maybe you want to grab this one. Is do you foresee a future inflection point where the fatigue of information overload directs users back to more traditional digital media behaviors? Newsletter subscriptions, I'm in favor of newsletter subscriptions. Podcast downloads, I'm also in favor of that because I do those too. Or even the return of the homepage. I'm not bullish on the return of the homepage, Mary Tyler, I gotta say. What do you think, Mark?
Well, I'll take a different view on the homepage. I think the homepage as it is probably not necessarily the future. But if you think about, and maybe to answer the question specifically, personalized, curated feeds turning into your homepage, right? I think there's a future in that. I think the more information publishers have about users' needs, preferences, and creating those personalized feeds, whether it's content feeds interspersed with other things like podcasts and media and conversations, I think there's a future in that. And I think at the end of the day, we need to filter the information, and I think that's another reason where I see value is in micro communities. And I think Newsweek has some really interesting opportunities for micro communities based on, the range of content and industries they cover.
Right. One final one, and then we got to get to the takeaways from Dorian Bencol. I knew I was actually going to ask this, Dorian, because when you mentioned it, Bharat, when you said, the voice of the of basically the audience, I was thinking, wait, isn't that editorial's job? But let's be real here. Also, I could see organizations are more complex. You're making a product that's beyond editorial content. But how do those two interact? Relate and interact with what Dorian's question was.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a tactical and a sort of strategic aspect to it. Tactical is, I mean, we work very closely together. So the editor-in-chief, the editor-in-chief and I were together on a call with Amazon to talk about their AI strategy. We're getting on a call with Google this week. So Brian, you know our SVP of audience, Josh Autry. He's a product mind himself, but he sits in editorial and constantly thinking about how to interact, build more interactive community features. So I would say our editorial folks are quite tuned into how to grow audience, also thinking of this as a business and not just not just a content machine, So if we don't have a good business, we won't have enough resources to build content. Some of these, the culture change happened when music went through a resurrection, where it came from near death to now being a profitable company. As part of it, a lot of things became clear that we have to look at this as not just an editorial focused company, but also a business that we need to have a viable business going forward, right? So when there are other companies where there's a wall between editorial and rest of the business. There are no walls here. I sit right across from the chief content officer. We discuss all the time. Last night he texted me that, hey, we're launching this AI articles. I think it doesn't make sense to have ads in it. All right, we removed it in 2 seconds later because we're engaging a B2B audience. So we're actually an anomaly in the publishing industry, I would say. But at the same time, I think this is where everybody should move towards. The social media companies know this already. It's not like there's a wall between content and distribution. It's all one company. So maybe learn from that and then build. If somebody had to build a new publishing company, they wouldn't build it like how legacy.
Another good topic of a newsletter, product-led, but a product-led organization. Because it's usually, there's lots of different publishers and not one, like some are sales-led, some are editorial-led. But I think that's an interesting approach to take, that the modern one will be product-led.
Oh, I wouldn't say, let me clarify. When I say product-led, I'm not saying product team-led. It's what it means is it's a consumer first company. Everybody's thinking about the consumer, working backwards from it, either building the tech or the content for it, right? So at all time, the bridge is the data and the AI between that.
Yeah, and I'm just saying it's complicated now because there are a lot of products that you have from the events, even I would assume to the list business, that are, and commerce was always sitting out, that are not, they don't neatly fit as editorial or there are definitely, or sales, it's just that it makes a lot of sense. So let's get to some of these, our takeaways. I'm going to go Mark, and then you, Bharat. Okay, let me do sharing. Okay. Mark, you want to start with your takeaways?
Sure. I think as we discussed, I think one of the key things that are impacting, a lot of what we're talking about is that the market is more fragmented than ever. So it's not just social media and mainstream media, it's all the things we talk about, alternative media and podcasters and influencers and creators. And that also has a pull on user attention. I mean, attention is currency. And so finding a way to address that as a traditional publisher or media organization, how do you bring those people back to your site when they have so many options and the market is so fragmented? I think related to that is, it's easier than ever for creators and influencers to build large engaged audiences. The tools are there, the distribution is there, platforms are there. And that, again, creates more fragmentation. And I think it also creates opportunities. Third thing we talked about is that as the social chaos is happening and social referrals are dropping and AI overviews over time may have an impact on traffic, I think it's more imperative than ever to build direct traffic, build returning traffic, and own your audience, and not, going back to the original sin metaphor, go back to that model where you say, hey, that's your business, I'm in content, you're in community. Those things have to happen hand in glove, I think, going forward to address some of these trends. And, I think there's pressure and expectations that the shift is going to move from, that one-way to two-way model where it's more authentic, more interactive, looks more like a creator model to some extent. And finally, community isn't just for community's sake. It actually drives like real business impact and ROI, dealing with a lot of the challenges that publishers have around known audiences and conversion and reader revenue and loyalty and so on. So yeah, those are some of the key takeaways that I think are important.
Cool. Mr. Krish, would you like to finish up?
This one is for Dorian. So the I mean, I think we spoke about a bunch of things, a bunch of these things already, but maybe what we didn't talk about is, most of the people that connect with the brand today, and or maybe the brand could be a, Joe Rogan or Tucker Carlson or Jon Stewart. That there's a certain personality and emotion and sort of clear stance on important issues. So this is what we want to strive to get to, right? So it's not just broadcasting trending topics, but we would like to take a clear stance on things and have a more high level confidence on it. So that's one. I mean, topic of this, like we need to have explicit focus on engagement and community. People should feel like they're participating in what's being delivered to them. They have a sense of belonging, or so so the engagement's higher. Like even if it's search based, I want them to type in Newsweek and then see what's Newsweek's point of view and come to our destination, right? So in a way, homepage becomes important. I want people to come to homepage more. Approachability should be expanded to include engagement. So everybody striving towards being more approachable. I think I feel like the approach that will come if the brand feels more accessible by doing more outbound and not just expecting inbound. So meaning making the destination more inviting and interactive. Comments are one, but also providing more polls and interaction, or a bot that's helping them as an assistant for their needs. And then quality should emphasize clarity and relevance. So everybody talks about quality, but everybody should be striving for high quality. But there's a chaos of content today. You can find, something about a certain topic in multiple places. But if we provide things that are more clear and relevant and contextual, I feel like you can cut through that chaos easier. And then perspective should include curiosity. So of course, we're not just providing the full story, but there's an angle and a voice to it. So I think these are the things I feel like our consumers are looking for. And in a way, the other takeaway, the sixth point is, if we can just hire our way into building it, where our opportunity here is to leverage AI and AI agent to be able to tackle some of these needs on behalf of our consumer.
Okay, cool. That's awesome. Mark, Bharat, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for bringing all these great insights. Anonymous attendee had said that it was fantastic, so we're going to go with that. So,
How do we know it's not a bot?
We don't, but we're just going to trust the anonymous attendee.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Great to see you, Bharat.
Thank you all for joining. We'll be sending around a link to a replay, and we sent around a survey for how we can make these even more valuable. I'm sorry, Mark, I kind of cut you off. What were you saying?
No, I'm good.
Okay, cool.
Mark,
All right.
I do need to plug in, Mark. I forgot.
Okay.
Please go to events.newsweek.com. We have an AI Impact event that's coming up. Do sign up if you're in New York. Would love to see you there.
Okay. See, Megan, you got the plug. All right. Thank you both.
All right,
Appreciate
thank
it.
you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.